watching World News Program with me, Mariam Zian, to the headlines. At least 32 martyrs in Israeli massacres across various areas of the Gaza Strip. Hamas confirms delegation led by Khalil al-Hayya has arrived in Cairo for truce talks. The movement calls for continued and intensified global stance. Algeria reaffirms its commitment to Africa's development and to establishing strategic partnerships in the continent. African countries praise Algeria's role in supporting continental energy dialogue. And Algerian-Rwandan talks are held to explore military cooperation opportunities. Following Zelensky's affirmation of Kiev's readiness to discuss ending attacks on civilian infrastructure, Putin also expresses willingness to consider the Ukrainian president's proposal. Meanwhile, Putin's advisor reveals an upcoming visit by Trump's envoy to Russia this week as part of efforts to reach a ceasefire in Ukraine. Hello and welcome to your nightly news. First, 32 Palestinians were martyred as a result of ongoing Israeli bombardment on various areas across the Gaza Strip since early dawn today. Local sources reported that Israeli warplanes launched a series of airstrikes on Gaza City and Khan Yunis, raising the death toll since Tuesday to 28 martyrs, in addition to numerous injuries. And several Palestinians were martyred following an Israeli strike that targeted a tent sheltering displaced persons east of Jabalia refugee camp in northern Gaza. Medical sources in Gaza confirmed on Tuesday that the death toll had risen to 5, including a young girl and a woman, in the Israeli artillery strike on the tent. Several others sustained serious injuries and were transferred to hospitals. And several Palestinians were also martyred as Israeli forces targeted residential areas in Khan Yunis, southern Gaza Strip. The civil defense in Gaza confirmed that 7 people were killed, including women and children, from a single family following an Israeli airstrike on a residential building near the Ahmed Abu al-Aziz school in central Khan Yunis. 13 others were wounded with varying degrees of severity and were taken to hospitals. 26 Palestinians were martyred and 60 others injured as a result of Israeli airstrikes on Gaza over the past 24 hours. In a statement on Tuesday, the Gaza Ministry of Health reported that the death toll, or the total number of martyrs from the Israeli assault on the Gaza Strip since October 7, 2023, has risen to 51,266, with a number of wounded reaching 116,999 Palestinians. And a senior Hamas official told AFP that a delegation from the movement has left Doha for Cairo to discuss new proposals for a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. According to the official, the delegation will hold meetings with Egyptian officials to explore new ideas for reaching a ceasefire agreement. The delegation includes lead negotiator Khalil al-Hayya and several senior Hamas figures. The Palestinian Islamic Resistance Movement Hamas called on Tuesday for an intensified global popular action using all means in cities, capitals, and squares around the world to condemn the war of extermination in Gaza. In a statement, Hamas stressed the need to continue all forms of mass demonstrations and marches in the coming days until the Zionist aggression stops, the siege of the Gaza Strip is broken.
We call for the continuation and escalation of global popular action by all means in all cities, capitals, and squares around the world. In the coming days, all forms of demonstrations, marches, strikes, sittings, sieges of Zionist and American embassies, and popular pressure will continue until the Zionist aggression stops and the siege on the Gaza Strip is lifted.
And in other news, Algerian State Minister, Minister of Energy and Mines Mohamed Arqab reaffirmed Algeria's commitment to supporting and advancing African countries, particularly in the energy sector. Speaking at the second conference on scientific research and technological innovation for African petroleum producers, Arqab emphasized Algeria's unwavering dedication to the continent's development and its effort to strengthen cooperation and partnerships across Africa.
Algeria remains faithful to its commitment to the development of the African continent. It works tirelessly to organize cooperation and partnerships with its sister African countries in various fields, with the energy sector at the forefront. This proactive policy aims to promote shared growth and build strong bridges between our peoples.
Minister Arqab also stated that Algeria has also adopted a strategy that values scientific cooperation and innovation as a key driver for sustainable development in the energy sector.
The national company Sonatrach plays a leading role in realizing this vision. It has launched an ambitious research and development strategy, which in just 3 years resulted in the registration of around 30 patents, compared to only 1 patent in 2020. Nearly 40 research projects have also been launched, more than 70% of which were carried out within the framework of national and international partnerships.
The Secretary General of the African Petroleum Producers Organization praised Algeria's pioneering role since the organization's founding in 1987, commending its continued commitment to supporting both the body and its African member states.
To begin with words of gratitude to the government and the good people of the People's Democratic Republic of Algeria for the hospitality accorded our various delegations since we arrived in this historic capital city of the land of the Matthias, Algiers. Excellency, Mr. Minister, please extend our appreciation to His Excellency Abdelmajid Tebboune, President of the Republic, for the continuous support that APO has been receiving from its founder member country, Algeria, since the founding of APO 38 years ago. Very few people know the critical role played by Algeria between 1984 and 1987 that led to the founding of APO's predecessor, APA. We have in our archives videos of the shuttle diplomacy undertaken by Algerian government officials to many African oil and gas producing countries to get them to agree to establish APA in 1987.
Algeria has assumed the presidency of the Forum of Research, Development and Innovation Centers of the member states of the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, in Africa. The forum aims to develop the oil industry by relying on modern technologies and finding solutions to the challenges facing development of the oil industry in African countries.
Today, as you saw, Algeria assumed the presidency of this forum, dedicated to research. It was established about a year ago, and its goal is to create partnerships between African countries in the field of research, development, and innovation. We, as Africans, have all the tools to access innovation.
And on Tuesday, Army General Saïd Shengrihat, Chief of Staff of the Algerian Army, met with his Rwandan counterpart, General Mubarak Muganga, who is leading a high-level military delegation on a working visit to Algeria. The two sides discussed strengthening bilateral military cooperation, regional security challenges in Africa, and issues of mutual interest. Senior officials from both countries attended the meeting. So in the speech on the occasion, General Saïd Shengriha praised the level of bilateral relations between Algeria and Rwanda, particularly through the exchange of visits between officials from both countries.
قد شكلت العلاقات الجزائرية الرواندية.
Since our two countries' independence, Algerian-Rwandan relations have been a model of solidarity between the people of our continent and an example of political coordination in international forums to defend Africa and its fundamental issues. Our relationship has also witnessed a new dynamic in recent years, particularly after the visit of the Chief of Defense Staff of the Rwandan Defense Forces to Algeria in September 2022, as well as my visit to Kigali in February 2024.
The minister delegate to the Minister of National Defense, Chief of Staff of the Algerian Army, General Said Shingriha, paid tribute to the victims of the Rwandan genocide on its 31st anniversary. He emphasized Rwanda's successful recovery from the tragedy and its progress in national reconciliation, noting that its renaissance has become a model for Africa.
ولا يفوتني بمناسبة إحياء بلدكم.
On the occasion of the country's commemoration on April 7th of the 31st anniversary of the 1994 genocide, we stand in solidarity with you, Mr. General, and with the friendly people of Rwanda in remembrance and tribute to the victims of that national tragedy. Rwanda has successfully overcome its aftermath, advanced on the path of national reconciliation, and achieved a comprehensive renaissance that stands as a model for the African continent.
And on Tuesday, Foreign Minister Ahmad Attaf received Azerbaijani Deputy Foreign Minister Yalchin Rafiev in Algiers as part of the second round of political consultations between the two countries. The two countries reviewed the outcomes of the talks, affirmed their commitment to enhancing bilateral ties, and agreed to maintain coordination with international and regional organizations.
Thank you very much for your time in this very hectic period.
Algiers hosted the Algerian-Russian Business Forum on Tuesday, drawing strong participation from economic actors of both nations. Organized by the Algerian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the forum welcomed the high-level Russian delegation representing companies across various production and service sectors, with a focus on exploring investment opportunities in Algeria. Key interest areas included agri-food, pharmaceuticals, and raw material industries, highlighting as promising fields for future bilateral cooperation.
In recent years, the Algerian-Russian relations have shown a development and a distinguished movement in terms of the visit of Russian businessmen to Algeria under the auspices of the two countries. The exchange of trade between the two countries has been increasing in recent years, so our ambition is to create a balance in the trade balance of the two countries. However, this reality is only an indicator of the availability of full trade opportunities in order to improve all its investment resources in the future.
I can say today that Algerian-Russian economic relations are witnessing significant progress and entering a new phase. Algeria is a leading country in terms of trade exchange with the Russian Federation, but these figures do not reflect the vast potential both countries possess. Our task today is to strengthen, develop, and implement these relations on the ground in the long term. I would like to point out that the political relations between Algeria and Russia are very strong, and the same applies to their economic ties. That is why we aspire to further develop these relations in the future within the framework of the Algerian-Russian Business Forum.
The Algerian-Russian Business Forum was marked by the signing of two agreements aimed at strengthening economic cooperation and expanding trade relations between the two countries. The first deal, signed between the Algerian and Russian Chambers of Commerce, sets a solid legal framework for joint collaboration and exchange of economic expertise. The second, a memorandum of understanding between Algeria's SAFEX and Russia's Expo Center, will pave the way for organizing joint exhibitions in both countries.
The main focus of this agreement is to create a suitable environment for companies to operate in both countries, to encourage mutual investment, and to support the private sector, particularly small and medium-sized enterprises, which will play an important role in bringing our economies closer together.
اليوم فيه شرك يعني
Today, a solid partnership is being established. As we discussed several sectors, including strategic ones, Algeria can even serve as a gateway for Russia to access other countries. It is an industrial partnership, first and foremost, given the Algerian market, especially in raw materials, which we are currently importing. There was a dialogue aimed at advancing major projects.
Secretary of State in charge of the national community abroad, Sofiane Cheyeb, paid a visit to the Kingdom of the Netherlands, where he met with members of the Algerian community residing there. According to the Algerian Foreign Ministry, the meeting was an occasion to officially announce the establishment of a new association for Algerians in the Netherlands and to encourage the organization of community activities among the diaspora, emphasizing the efforts made to strengthen ties between the diaspora and their homeland.
Express the strong willingness of the highest authority in Algeria.
Also, the Minister of State, Minister of Foreign Affairs, National Community Abroad and African Affairs, Mr. Ahmed Attaf, arrived in the Swedish capital, Stockholm, on an official visit to the Kingdom of Sweden in his capacity as representative of the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune. This visit reflects the two countries' commitment to boosting the historical relations that unite them, particularly through the consolidation of the existing political consensus on key current issues at the regional and international levels, as well as the exploration of prospects for strengthening the economic partnership between the two countries. Sahara diplomats confirmed that Morocco is using resources like phosphate and fishery wealth to bribe countries and legitimize its occupation of Western Sahara. Well, Ziyu Salama Ziyu, Polisario Front representative in Austria, stated that Morocco offers these resources to silence opposition to the Sahrawi cause during the 10th Sahrawi Workers' Union Conference.
The regime used to bribe all the Western countries, giving them things for free. In exchange for what? So they wouldn't speak about the right of the Sahrawi people, wouldn't mention the occupied territories, wouldn't allow journalists to talk about it, and wouldn't raise the issue in international forums. Meanwhile, we Sahrawis are weak and oppressed, and while they bribe, as you've seen, we don't bribe, not because we don't want to, but because we have nothing to bribe with. We speak with law, ethics, international relations, and with the truth.
The Sahrawi diplomat called for an end to the exploitation of Sahrawi resources, adding that the Zionist entity is drilling for gas off the Sahrawi coast through the Moroccan regime.
And
that phosphate, which was taken abroad, some of it went to Spain, Madrid, and France, each receiving a share to keep them silent. Other countries also received portions. This is how they've tried to bury the Sahrawi cause. Now, Morocco is worried, closing all the doors, because those who once took part in the looting might be exposed. They want to make it seem like we can be negotiated with or bought off, but we are a peaceful people. We may submit to many things, but we will never take part in the theft carried out by the Moroccan regime.
Ziyu also confirmed that the Moroccan occupier resorts to violence and violations in the occupied territories after exhausting all means of bribery and silencing the opposition.
And when all their cards fall, when threats no longer work, when bribery dries up and their tricks are exposed, what do they have left? Nothing that can help them or stand with them. So they resort to their last option, unethical tactics to suppress the Sahrawi people. That's why we must respond. That's why we urgently call on the United Nations and human rights organizations to immediately deploy and take position on the ground.
The special representative of the Secretary General of the United Nations in Libya, Hannah Tete, stressed the need to hold national elections and appoint a government that enjoys the confidence of the people. In a UN statement, Tete warned that if the institutional division is not contained, it could lead to further deep divisions in the country. She emphasized that elections are not an end in themselves, but rather a means to establish a stable government that enjoys the trust of the people and makes decisions on their behalf.
There were different opinions and viewpoints, but everyone agreed on the necessity of holding elections. The difference was over how to achieve this. In the West, the view was that it wasn't just about forming a government to lead the country to elections, but rather that there were specific issues that needed to be addressed. In the East, most of what I heard was about forming a new government, which would prepare the country for elections. So we formed an advisory committee to help resolve differences and bring the country's diverse perspectives closer together.
And in Sudan, 77 were killed and dozens more injured as a result of intense artillery shelling by the Rapid Support Forces RSF targeting various neighborhoods in Al-Fashir. The same source stated that the RSF used approximately 250 artillery shells during the bombardment of neighborhoods in Al-Fashir, resulting in the killing of 77 people, including women who were burned alive inside their homes. The British capital London will host talks on Wednesday between Ukraine and its Western allies to discuss ways of reaching a ceasefire with Russia, according to AFP, citing a Ukrainian official. The level of Kiev's participation in the talks was not specified. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky had earlier announced on Monday that a Ukrainian delegation would head to London on Wednesday for talks with representatives from the US and other European countries to reach a ceasefire agreement between Moscow and Kiev. And the Kremlin said that Russia is ready to consider Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's proposal to halt mutual attacks on civilian infrastructure in both countries. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov stated that the issue is complex and that President Vladimir Putin is open to discussing it. However, Peskov told reporters that there are currently no concrete plans for talks between Russia and Ukraine. On Monday, President Zelensky had announced that his country is prepared for any form of dialogue aimed at ending attacks on civilian facilities.
Kyiv needs to remove legal obstacles before any talks to halt attacks on civilian facilities can begin. If the Ukrainian side is willing and open to this, and despite the lack of concrete plans for such talks, Russian President Vladimir Putin is ready to discuss this issue.
Russian presidential advisor Yuri Yushakov announced Tuesday that U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff plans to visit Moscow this week. According to Russia's TASS news agency, Yushakov stated that Witkoff will hold a round of talks with Russian officials during this second visit to Moscow, following his first on April 11, during which he met with President Vladimir Putin. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Ismail Baghai announced Tuesday that expert-level talks between Iran and the U.S. have been postponed to next Saturday instead of taking place on Wednesday, based on a proposal from Oman. Baghai added that the technical talks on Saturday will coincide with the presence of the heads of the Iranian and U.S. delegations. China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs announced Tuesday that Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi will visit China on Wednesday at Beijing's invitation. At a regular press conference, ministry spokesperson Guo Jiankun said that both sides will discuss bilateral relations and pressing international and regional issues of mutual concern. He added that the visit will be of significant importance in strengthening mutual political trust between the two countries. And Russia's Interfax news agency quoted a Kremlin official as saying that President Vladimir Putin discussed Iran's nuclear program on Tuesday during talks with Sultan Haytham bin Tariq Al Saeed of Oman, who is currently visiting Russia. The agency cited Russian presidential advisor for foreign affairs Yuri Yushakov, who said that two sides discussed progress made in negotiations between Iranian and American representatives and confirmed that Russia will provide assistance as much as possible. And finally, the Vatican Secretary of State, Cardinal Pietro Parolin, participated along with other faithful in a rosary for Pope Francis on Tuesday, held at Santa Maria Maggiore Basilica in Rome. Roman Catholic cardinals decided on Tuesday that Pope Francis's funeral will be held on Saturday in St. Peter's Square, setting the stage for a solemn ceremony that will draw leaders and personalities from around the world. Pope Francis, 88, died on Monday after suffering a stroke. Ladies and gentlemen, that was it for tonight's program. Thanks for watching and have a great night.